Welcome to your 12-minute HR lesson. Today I'm going to be much more to the point. This is going to be punchier, more direct. This is what you need to do. This is part of your job. Off you go and do it. Today we're talking about decisions. We're going to talk about what makes a bad decision. We're going to talk about what makes a risk decision. And then finally I'm going to explain how it's not your job to make good decisions or bad decisions. When it comes to HR, it's your job to do the best that you can to make sure that decisions are made as well as they can be and that risks are seen. Interested? Well, let's go. Right, so we're talking about three things: bad decisions, risky decisions, and how you can make good risky decisions. Let's go. Let's start off with what is a bad decision. A bad decision is a decision that didn't turn out well. It's a decision that we regret after the fact. We can look back and say, okay, there were 3 options, 2 options, 5 options on the table. We picked that, and that was wrong. We went with B, and we should have gone with A. So there's 2 ways in which we can think about bad decisions, and funnily enough, people do this wrong all the time. It's not the end of the world, but we really have to be smart about how we analyse our decisions to decide whether or not they were bad. Perhaps the most common, and probably the worst way that we can think about this, is decisions in hindsight. Hindsight is 20/20, as they say. We can look back and go, well, now that I know what's going to happen, now that I know all the information, I can see that B was the wrong thing to do rather than A. But did we know that then? Or are we making that analysis now? Because it's almost pointless to look back a decision and go, well, had I known that it wouldn't work out, that was clearly the wrong thing to do. So that's one type of generally bad decision analysis. Now we've got the other type of question, which is, did I make a bad decision in the moment? Based on what I knew then, based on what I was thinking about, did I make the wrong call? I can give you 1,001 different historical analogies about people who made some crazy decisions, but in the world that they lived in, they make way more sense than they do now. And that's always the risk when you're looking at history, is that you've got to put on the shoes of the people at the time and weigh up the different things. You could talk about Vietnam and the relevance of the domino theory, and, well, clearly that wasn't going to happen, but at the time America didn't know that. And did they think that was true? Well, they did. And were they wrong to think that at the time? That's a very complex question. But if we want to more fairly analyse a decision, put yourself in the shoe of the decision maker at that time, what they knew in that moment, not after the fact and what does work out and what doesn't work out. You can look at those decisions to go, okay, well, did we weigh the information correctly? Did we calmly make that decision? Did we emotively make that decision? Was it a spur of the moment? Was it in anger? Was it in haste? There's lots of different ways in which we can make bad decisions in the moment, but at least it's a different lens. So let's talk about risky decisions and recognize that risky decisions are entirely different from good or bad decisions. A risk decision is any time you take an action in which there is a possibility or a probability or a variable as to what the implications of that action are going to be. It's any time you decide to do A, and after the fact of that decision, something will happen. It is if you place a bet on number 5 that it's going to win, the decision that you've made is to place the bet. The probability is whatever the likelihood that the horse is going to come in, 10%, 15%. The outcome is either you're going to lose your $2 bet or you're going to make $10. Those are the 2 potential outcomes. Any decision that is a risky decision is any time you do something and then a variable happens after that, and based on those two interactions, something happens. It's a chip kick in rugby. You kick the ball, hoping that you're going to get a favourable bounce, and that bounce is just a variable. We don't know which way a rugby ball is going to bounce. So where did these two things overact? What is a bad, risky decision? What's a good, risky decision? And so forth. If you think of a Venn diagram, there's actually not a lot of overlap. But to keep it really simple, a risky decision that was in fact a bad decision is any circumstances in which you didn't anticipate the risk at all, or you missed a variable in play. If you're going to make a gamble, if you're going to roll the dice, it's pointless to look back at that and go, well, I shouldn't have done that. You're not going to get anywhere. If you took a risk knowing that it was a risk and the risk didn't pay off, you're wasting your time regretting that decision. The only thing you can probably or should fairly regret is the risk you didn't know that you were taking. You didn't think of a variable or a probability or a question that comes from that. So, the only thing that is a bad, risky decision is the unknown or the unanticipated or the unforeseen risk. So that's the little red flag in your head. When am I, or when might I be making an unanticipated or an unknown risk decision? I'm going to take you on a little diversion here. I'll probably have to do a whole episode on this another day. The concept of the known unknowns, the unknown unknowns, the unknown knowns, and the known knowns, if I've got those all correctly. Strangely, that was popularized by Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense during the Second Iraq War. He basically stood in a press conference and he said, well, look, there's things that we know, there's things that we know that we know, there's things that we know we don't know, there's things that we don't know that we don't know, and then there's things that we think we know, but in fact we don't know. And it's such an interesting idea. The most important part is there's things that you don't know that you don't know, and that you haven't thought about. There are things that I know that I don't know that. So let me give you a quick example. There might be a hazard underneath your house. Maybe your foundations are failing. Maybe there's a lava cave. Maybe there's an earthquake's about to happen. You don't know that that's going to happen, and you're not aware that you don't know that. You hadn't put any thought or any mind to it. Then there's things that you know that might be happening, they might not. But you know that that's a gap. So when you get down to it, there's the gaps in your knowledge that you're aware of, and then there's gaps in your knowledge that you are unaware of. And that is something that's really important to think about in this space. And to really pin this down to what we're talking about, not necessarily gaps in our knowledge, but also variables and risks that we hadn't thought of. What might happen? What might not happen? What does so-and-so think of such and such? How close are those two people? Do they know someone who's taken a case before? There is always potential variables that we don't know of, but there's going to be some things that we might be able to find out. What we never want to have is a variable that we hadn't thought to look for, a risk that we hadn't anticipated might be in play. We've rattled through some ideas pretty quickly because I want to talk to you about practical use. And I am going to talk about our company. We don't make major decisions. Our clients make the decisions. We don't make the decisions. But it's our job to make sure our clients don't make bad, risky decisions. So I'm not going to make this all about our company, but I am going to show you what we do so you can recognize it's probably what you should do, doing the similar sort of thing for your companies or yourself. Because HR is not the decision maker. HR should never be the decision maker. That is a whole topic for another day, but let's just take it as read. You're not the manager. You shouldn't be making these decisions. In the same way that our clients are the managers, they should be making the decision. It's our job to make sure they don't make bad, risky decisions. So let me give you a couple of examples. A lot of what we do is employment law. We're a problem-solving company, and most of the time those problems involve employment decisions. Things are going badly and we're here to fix them. So for instance, if it's a question of dismissal, we don't make that decision. But what we do is lay out the variables, lay out possibilities. Well, you could go down these lines. There's a possibility that they're going to take umbrage with this over here. We make sure that you're not taking unanticipated risk with their process, but the person still feels that they're entitled. They still feel that this is unreasonable. You could make this decision and you could see a PG and you may have to settle on that, or you may be prepared to go to court. Alternatively, if you don't make the decision, they might stay and you lose 3 other people because they're frustrated with this person and they're likely to leave. Alternatively, if they stay in this and this whole site could go under because of the poor performance or the toxic environment, we don't decide what the right things to do are, but we're here to spell out in the same way that the National Security Service doesn't make the decisions for the politicians, but they do need to set the table for them. And so that's what we do. And that's kind of what you should be doing as well. Managers need to manage. Managers need to own the decisions. It's our job to set the table, to see what's in front of them, to see this is what might be possibly happening. If they do this, if they don't. If they make decision A, this is what might happen. If they take decision B, this is what might happen. There's nothing wrong with risk. There's nothing wrong with taking risks. The only thing that we ever need to be careful of is taking risks that we didn't know were there. I'm recording this on a Friday and it really shows because I've given myself an absolute soft pitch on this one. This is risk decision, risk analysis, decision making, employment law, internal advisory. Like this is so in my wheelhouse. So clearly it's Friday. Clearly I'm taking it easy on myself. Thank you for listening. If this is something you find interesting, if this is something you want to know more of, check out our website, pragmatichrm.nz. There's a couple of other articles on there that are along these lines. There's a couple of courses that are similar, particularly around disciplinary, particularly around change. If you're not interested, no problem. Please share us, please like us, please repost us, please get us out there. We may not be what you need right now, but you might help us get to someone who does. Otherwise, I'll catch you next time. Thanks.